we are going to talk about the strategies to use when you read poetry while also learning about transportation. I have two guests today. Here is our first guest from the past. You may recognize him. It's Cowboy Needles. Howdy, everyone. I'm here to talk to you about my favorite poem called My Western Home. You may know it as Home on the Range. Let me recite it for you. Oh, give me a home where the buffaloes roam, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the sky is not cloudy all day. Home, home on the range, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the sky is not cloudy all day. Wow, I love that. Now, my distant cousin, Miss Needles from Alexandria, is going to read a poem about some people who used oxen and a covered wagon to come west, just like I did. Now we're going to read a poem about a covered wagon. It's called Covered Wagon, Bumpy Trail, written by Verla Kay and illustrated by S.D. Schindler. Now, when you read poetry, you read it a little differently from reading a regular story. So, as I'm reading, I'm going to stop and talk about some of the strategies that you can use when you're reading poetry. Here we go. This poem is about a family that goes west to California, and it takes them months through the mountains to do that. So, keep that in mind when you're listening to this poem. Covered wagon, bumpy road, plodding oxen, heavy load. Now, as you noticed, I paused every time there was a line break. That's often what you do in poetry. So I said, covered wagon, bumpy road, plodding oxen, heavy load. And that helps the poem flow. Now, in poems, the writers often use vocabulary words that maybe we've never heard before. And on this page, I was wondering if you've ever heard of the word plodding. And so we can use a strategy to try to figure it out. So it's a bumpy road, and the oxen, which is the animal here, is plodding and it's heavy. So that kind of makes me think that they're not going quickly. They're going slow and steady and plodding. So that's what plodding means, kind of slow. Mother, father, baby John, bouncing, jouncing, moving on. Well, here are the characters of this poem, mother and father and baby John. And we have their bouncing, and now jouncing, maybe you've never heard of that, but it is a synonym to bouncing. It's another word for bouncing or being jolted. So we can learn a lot of higher level vocabulary words when we read poems. So they're moving on. Let's see where they're going. Fodder, water, guns and tools, clothes and blankets, stubborn mules. Okay, these are all the things they're taking on their trip. Look at all their things. I think this is even a telegraph right here. So they can send telegrams when they get there. Maybe. This is a butter churn. And maybe you don't know what fodder means. And it's maybe a little bit hard to see here. Water, we know what means they're going to drink the water, but fodder is actually food, like hay and things, for their animals. And maybe you figure that out by what the words were saying, because it's talking about their mules and the water. Falter, flounder, whoops, in ditch. Wiggle, wriggle, try a switch. Okay, I have a few things about this page. First of all, the author of this poem doesn't write in complete sentences. The author said in ditch instead of in the ditch because they wanted it to flow. Falter, flounder, whoops, in ditch, Wiggle, wriggle, try a switch. Now, this was a little disturbing to me. They have to hit this oxen to get them to go, and the switch is the thing that she's hitting them with. But sometimes when we read poetry, it evokes our feelings. And in this situation, maybe we have an uncomfortable feeling. But this is maybe what they had to do. So we have to think about that when we're reading. So it's okay to have uncomfortable feelings when you are reading poetry or any story. Thunder, lightning, floods of rain, mucky, muddy, wet terrain. Okay, this author wanted us to say thunder and lightning loudly because she put it in all caps. And imagine what this would be like if you were out there on the plains pushing your wagon in the thunder and the lightning. It's all mucky and the floods of the rain. Wet terrain, maybe you don't know what that means. So let's take a look at the picture. What could this mean? It's the land at this point of where they're going. That's mucky and muddy. So that gives us a hint. It's the land. Mother, father, baby John, pushing forward, struggle on. Weary, bleary, sweaty, hot, end of day, a camping spot. Here's where the author decided to use sentence fragments instead of a full sentence to tell the story. That's what is often done in poetry. If this were a regular story, we might say, Mother and father and baby John were very sweaty and hot. It was the end of the day and they found a camping spot. But for the rhythm and the rhyme, the author decided to just make them phrases. Weary, bleary, sweaty, hot, end of day, a camping spot. Dry chips burning, steaks of snakes, coffee brewing, Johnny cakes. Okay, on this page, I'm going to ask myself a question. What is burning here? Well, it says dry chips. Now I'm going to use some background knowledge that I had when I was learning about the Native Americans. They would burn buffalo chips, which is the dung of the buffalo or the poop of the buffalo, and they would use that for fuel of their fires. So maybe they're using this guy here. Maybe they're using his dung. But I also know that people would dry out little wooden chips. So maybe they brought their own chips to use for their fire. Dry chips burning. Steaks of snakes. What is that? Well, I'm assuming that they are catching snakes and turning them into food and making it into a steak. Coffee brewing. Johnny cakes. Johnny cakes is like a pancake. Rocky Mountains, massive, steep, rugged trail, wagons creep. Oh, this author decided to use an interesting, juicy word, massive, to show us how really huge this mountain was. Instead of just using like big, massive gives us more details. This is sad to me a little bit. Dumping, tossing, trinkets, trunk, cook stove, treasures. Now they're junk. So they had to get rid of a lot of their things, their trinkets, which is like small things, like I call my knickknacks and maybe jewelry or things like that. Their cook stove down here, this was so very heavy. They could not go through these mountains having all this stuff in their wagon, so they had to leave it, which was probably very devastating to them to leave their things. Hot sun swelters, parched land dry, thick dust swirls, choking sky. Can you just imagine? Now here are a few words. Let's think about the word swelter. If you don't know what that means, you can use the clues of hot and sun. So it's sweltering hot. It's very hot. Parched land dry. Well, the land being dry is another word for that is being parched, something being dry. Thirsty is another word for that. Thick dust swirls, choking sky. So it's like the sky is taking on like a person's action, and it's choking with all of the dust. Mother, father, baby John, plodding forward, struggle on. Poor things, look how worn out they look. The author is repeating a little bit here. A lot of times in poetry, you see repeats, you see repeating phrases, and that's what the author did here. Mother, father, baby John, plodding forward, struggle on. Pushing, shoving, top of crest, fire, blankets, well-earned rest. So they're getting to the top of this mountain, and now they found a place that they can rest with their make a fire. They earned it. Ooh, frosty, frigid, icy air, lacy snowflakes everywhere. So here are some more words. They didn't just say cold, frosty, and frigid, icy. They're good descriptive words and good juicy words. Plunging, slipping, stuck in snow, frozen wheels, oxen, whoa. This author decided to put dialogue in here, and she wanted you to say whoa really loud, so she put it in capital letters with an exclamation point. Mother, father, baby John, walking slowly, trudging on. Moving forward, end of trail, meadows, poppies, soft brown quail. So they've made it to where they want to stop. There are meadows of poppy flowers, and there's going to be animals to hunt like the quail. Building cabins, clearing lands, rustic timbers, helping hands. Maybe you don't know what a timber is, but if you look around, you might get some clues. They've cut down some trees, and that is what the word timber means, the wood from the trees. Mother, father, baby John, fleecy flannel, night clothes on. It's cute. Over time, they've made themselves a cabin, and now they're living there. And our last page, sturdy windows, heavy door, warm and safe now, happy snores. It was a long way in their covered wagon, but now they're settled in California. That was great, Miss Needles. Let me review a few things that I learned from your lesson. When you read a poem, pause at the line breaks. Use the punctuation marks. Use clues to figure out words that you don't know. Ask yourself questions as you are reading to make sure you know what is happening. Poems sure are fun to read out loud. Here's another stanza from my favorite poem. How often at night, when the heavens are bright, by the light of the glittering stars, have I stood there amazed and asked as I gazed if their beauty exceeds this of ours. Thanks, Cowboy Needles. I really like the way you recited that poem. I can just picture you out there on the plains gazing up at those stars. Speaking of stars, my next guest is going to read a poem about a different form of transportation. You may recognize him. To infinity and beyond. Hi, I'm Buzz Lightyear. That Cowboy Needles reminds me of my old buddy Woody. After years of academy training, I just learned what you do when you read a poem. You pause at the line breaks. You use punctuation marks. You can use clues to figure out words you don't know. You can ask yourself questions as you're reading. Poems are fun to read. Here's one of my favorites. I'm Building a Rocket by Ken Nesbitt. I'm building a rocket. As soon as I'm done, I'm taking my friends on a trip to the sun. But what do you mean the sun is too hot? Oh, well, I suppose I'll just pick a new spot. I'm building a rocket. I'm finished it soon, and I'm taking my friends on a trip to the moon. What do you mean that the moon has no air? Well, dang, then I guess that we can't go up there. I'm building a rocket. It's going to fly. I'm taking my friends way up high in the sky. But what do you mean when you ask how we'll land? This rocket is harder to build than I planned. To heck with the rocket, it's out in the shed. I'm taking my friends out for pizza instead. Wait, that reminds me. Oh no, I have an intergalactic emergency. I'm supposed to meet Woody and the gang at Pizza Planet. To infinity and beyond. Bye.